Welcome back to the Atlantic Construction Podcast. Very pleased to have our guest today from the Ontario General Contractors Association, President Giovanni Cautillo. Thanks so much for being here, Giovanni. This is a Procore sponsored episode, so we're welcoming Giovanni from his office at the OGCA in Toronto, Ontario, and yeah, thanks for being with us today, sir.
Yeah, I very much appreciate the opportunity to be able to talk to you guys. I think it's imperative that we, as general contractors, kind of share ideas and pain points, because sometimes you're isolated in your own geography and you think, oh, I'm the only one going through this. When in essence, when you start talking right across the nation, you find out that everyone's going through the exact same issues that you are. So it's fun to share not only the gripes but also the possible solutions at the other end.
Absolutely, sir. Yeah, we're really looking forward to diving into some hot topics, and like we talked about pre-episode, a lot of the problems and issues and current trends and current issues that general contractors and all contractors are having throughout Ontario. It's not that much different from other provinces, right? So we'll draw some threads from central Canada to the East Coast, and maybe we can start, Giovanni, just with an overall kind of summation of the association. What it means to be a member. Obviously, it's been around since the 30s, I think, if I'm correct on that date. So long history, and obviously, a huge facilitation for a lot of complex issues that come through for these contractors that are generaling these large projects all throughout the province, and you're facilitating all kinds of relationships, right? New things in the Construction Act, contracts, just there for the member to kind of navigate and guide them through all the ever changing things throughout the year. So I'll let you just give us an overall view. How many members currently, things like that.
Okay, so you're right. The organization was founded in 1939, and clearly I was not even a thought in someone's mind at that time when it was developed. And the preceding notion of why these companies came together back in 1939 were on the basis of health and safety and improving health and safety for workers from the general contracting side of things. So we've got really good foundational roots in that aspect, and it's still one of our foundational pillars moving forward today in our strategic plan and everything that we do. So health and safety is central to everything that we do. Now, to bring that back up in today's things, your other question was how many members that we have. So in Ontario, we've got 200 members, but they represent over 70% of the GDP that is generated in Ontario on an annual basis. So we're 14 billion plus. And so,
So are you talking about GDP as a whole, or
as
within
a whole,
with not just within ICI construction?
no, as a
Right.
whole,
It just
GDP as a whole.
shows you just the massive take and share of the economy that this sector has, right?
Well, and you think about it and what this sector employs, not only directly but indirectly, right? When you look
Yeah,
at it, those 200
indirectly.
members, the 70% of ICI holistically, we can employ up to 500,000 individuals in ICI only, right? And so, we've got 70% of that chunk, because you're looking at sub trades, you're looking at, direct employees, you're looking at secondary and tertiary markets. It's an incredible a number. But again, construction is a main indicator for GDP. When you look at how we relate, just look at the projects that our members do, all infrastructure, all the transit projects that we're at, hospitals, schools, water, wastewater treatment plants, you name it. When it comes down to facilities and buildings and community centers, everything that the public could possibly need, be it both on the public side or the private side, our members are able to facilitate. And it goes from the smallest contractor who does a park for the city of Toronto, or name that municipality, municipality X, all the way up to the 100 billion plus job where you're doing multiple rail projects right across for both Metro Links and Infrastructure Ontario. So there's a lot of diversity in our membership, and we represent small, medium, and large contractors. We don't just focus on one. We represent every geographic region in Ontario. and we're even though our offices are based in Toronto, we're not Toronto centric. We have our board is representative of, we've got members from Timmins and North Bay and whatnot on there, as well as Niagara. We've also got the representation of 50% being unionized and 50% being open shop. So we don't discriminate against any general contractor. We welcome them all in because we want to share and to assist general contractors in moving their issues forward, in removing impediments to how they do their work and bettering society and contributing to that portion of GDP that I spoke of.
Yeah, it's interesting too. The inception in 1939, like you said. I mean, basically these founding fathers of company XYZ. I'm sure there's people out there who know these companies, and maybe some of them are still big names in the industry, right? But they come together. They're competitors at the time, but there's so many issues that need to be tackled. There's such a huge market and market share that's there, and basically these competitors are coming together. And you see that on smaller scales, and I don't know how all associations start within the construction industry, but it's basically, the founding fathers coming together and say, we need to solve these problems. We might be competing with each other on large tenders every 6 months or every 3 months, or on closing dates, but we need to get together and have a hub for where we can solve problems and collaborate. So it's neat just to hear about the inception.
And the funny part is, if you were to take, the minutes from any one of these meetings back in 1939 and whatnot, you would find a lot of the issues are still relevant today.
Yeah.
Contracts being one of them. That's one of those
Except
things that,
except people not turning their cell phones off during the meeting.
well, yeah, no, that one over there, that one's probably something totally different. That was predates. It would be like my horse is not, pulling enough or whatever the case may be, right? So,
Yeah.
um, but no, all kidding aside, I find that there's still a lot of relevancy to the minutes and what they were talking about back then, and how it's still part of the vernacular today. You're looking at health and safety. It hasn't gone away. It's only become more and more entrenched into how we do things, right? Advocacy being something that you wanted to always talk to the buyers construction and inform them, so that was always part of their ideology as well. And then obviously we expanded upon how we want to do it. Engagement being another pillar of ours right now, which is making sure that we're talking to stakeholders like yourselves and all of your members in Atlantic Canada, but all stakeholders, like the consulting engineers, the architects, the decision makers, the people that actually are issuing out the tenders on the procurement side. We want to make sure that everyone's on the same page so that they understand, you know, why we're when they write a contract, we come back to them and say, this isn't working for us for the following reasons. And by putting that language in, you may be diminishing the pool of prospective bidders. So if you change it to this instead, you'll get, a wider net that you can expand upon. And just I guess the fourth kind of pillar of our strategic plan, and basically what you really want to highlight is, because it is a Procore event and whatnot, so way to go Procore, is the whole innovation side of things. We introduced innovation as another foundational pillar for us in our last strategic plan last year, because we found it to be so advantageous when you go speak to kids in schools, because you want to entice them to come to construction. How are you going to do so? Money is one way, but you also want to say that, what, we're technologically advanced. We've got Boston mechanics spot the dog on some of our job sites, walking around and doing the readings and collecting the data. We've got drones on other sites that are picking up things from a 3D view for video capture and whatnot. We've got tablets that are being utilized by site supers and foremen, that when we receive a load of X that comes into the site, by the press of a button, the entire company is made aware of its receipt. It issues payment and it issues a PO for the next truck. This is the kind of stuff that we want to make sure that we talk to the next I guess prospective individuals that want to come into construction and see it as a viable career. Because we've had for the longest time a big challenge where you've got academia only feeding into academia, and construction was always seen as, if you can't make it in university or college, then you go to construction. It is the farthest thing from the truth. I do a lot of talks at schools, and when I walk in, first question, how many of you have thought of construction today? no hands go up unless, it's some Italian kid and goes, oh yeah, my dad's in
And in your experience, what are they thinking when they think of construction? What's the first thing that comes to mind? What's the stereotype? What's the
dirty. If you can't make it in university and whatnot, then you go to construction.
Yeah, it's a plan B. It's not status. It's not
It's
yeah.
the last plan on it. And I hate to say it, but some guidance counselors say, well, if you keep up grades like this, you'll end up in construction. They should be talking to the A-list students saying, if you keep up grades like this, you're going to end up in construction. Good for you.
Yeah.
Because during the course of my talk, I'll invariably turn around and say, who likes to make X number of dollars during the year? And all the hands go up. I said, then you want to be in the trades. You want to be in construction. You want to be a
Yeah.
project manager, and we've lost it's a generational thing. I remember when I grew up with my dad, he's a stonemason from Italy, and he instilled a sense of pride into me. So he would drive around the city and he goes, I built that building. I built that building. We did 8,326 bricks in that building. And he knew so much about, and there was just that oozing sense of pride. The kids today, they don't have that connection. There isn't that pride aspect of look what I've accomplished, look what I've built. I'm part of, the GDP of Ontario. That's the kind of thing that we really
Yeah.
want to get back into it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I couldn't have said it better. I mean, there is at the same time, and it's a funny paradox because at the same time, there's a lot of highly passionate builders. Where there's a lot of passion and fire that goes into having our cities and communities built. At the same time, there's the catch-22 of that that stereotype of well, construction is still not seen, and it does come from education and academia, that world, and if we could bridge the gap and enmesh it so that it's on the same kind of page status wise in people's thinking, in people's minds, because we're going to talk about labor shortage, right? And there's all these ways that obviously OGCA is solving labor shortage, and everyone else is being innovative, anyone within the industry, right? It doesn't matter if you're on the more white collar consulting side or the blue collar trade side. There's a labor shortage in everything. If you're looking for estimators, there's labor shortages everywhere. So there's ways to create pathways, and how do we get more students involved, and diversity and women in construction, and all these things, and we're all trying to solve immigration, but to change the thinking from that level, it's hard to measure data wise, but the problem will be solved in that regard. I think maybe more so if within a 10-year span, if we can change people's thinking, right? And people in the industry already know what it's about, right? But people that aren't, how do we get them over?
Great points. I think we were very fortunate to have a minister of labor. So it's Ministry of Labor, Immigration, Training and Skills Development. A number of years ago, we embarked on conversations back and forth with the minister, and we impressed upon the minister the need for basically a campaign to communicate the skilled trades as young as kindergarten. Because we were finding we're going into high schools, and as I'm going into high schools, the high schools are stating one thing because the message is mixed, as I noted. And so we wanted to get in there because um, the removal of shops really put us back. The removal of having shops in schools, and having people exposed to tools and cutting implements and mechanic shops and all that stuff, that's now relegated to some aspect of the past, and we wanted it to be talked about still in schools. There are kids, my own kids, for an example, are 16 and 14. They grew up watching Bob the Builder, and I was tickled pink because at least there's a cartoon that talks about construction and all of the aspects that you can do in construction. The guy walked around with a hard hat all day long, and it was normalizing it. It was okay because the kid's grandfather, my dad, would walk around with a hard hat, and so that they could make the correlation. This minister took it upon himself to really drive the campaign, and this is Minister Monty McNaughton. So I've got to give him a shout out and all the kudos, because under his guidance, he was able to really formulate this campaign, and there's been a real push and thrust on the trades. on the construction side of things, on the supervision side and the management side, the OGCA is taking certain steps in order to help that. We can get into that now. We can get into it, a little later on. It's entirely up to you.
You
It
just
is your
yeah, you mentioned it. Why don't we just dive right into that?
So we saw a need, and we did roundtable discussions with our members, and what is the most important aspect for general contractors, and that's supervision, as I noted. And so there's really no aspect. There's some, construction management, there's some project management, but there's not one cohesive course that blends all this together and curbs expectations, because that's another thing that didn't mention just yet. But a lot of the graduating students that come out of university or college in these programs are expecting to be CEOs the next day, are expecting to get paid, billions of dollars for doing no work, or expecting to climb up the ladder and become, oh, okay, so I started today as a junior, I'll become a senior in 3 months, right? And they're like, no,
Yeah.
no, you actually got to put your time into it. And so we curb expectations, and we focus on the fundamental skills, which is communication, conflict management, stuff that they're going to scheduling, and really focus on that. And so what we've done is we've gotten grant money from the Ministry of Labor through Skills Development Fund. We're into our second year, and we're really focusing on bridging the gap from the new graduates that come out as project coordinators that want to be project managers, or any newcomers to Canada that fall into that category as well, right? That really want construction as a career choice, that want to be coordinators that could become project managers. So we have two, bridging options there. And then we have a third one, which is a train the trainer aspect of things, where we take superintendents on site, and we give the toolkit to our own members, who can then signify and point out, well, this individual, he'd be a great, or she would be a great add on to our management team. We want to give them the skill set in order to develop. And so it allows contractors to facilitate within themselves the training that is, again, those fundamental skills. So we got this grant money, and we did it. We had a cohort that had gone through, and now we're into the second year of it, which is the placement aspect of things, right? We're looking place it with companies. And so we've got those two aspects, plus a third aspect, which is we're focusing on women in construction. And we're doing the surveys and the data collection now to ensure that we know exactly when, why is it that women aren't entering construction, and if they are entering, why aren't they staying in construction? So there's a number of aspects that we're looking at to really make sure that we're filling the void for our members that really necessitate us continuing the conversation. So overall, it's been very fruitful in the sense of gaining knowledge and insight, and then providing that to a generation that hopefully, or the people that come into it, hopefully will be the next project managers and site supers on our sites. So overall, we're still in their infancy. We're only in year 2, but we're hoping to really keep advancing this so that we can have a pipeline of dedicated individuals that come from schools and newcomers to Canada that we can then place in our companies.
Right, and you're solving the problem from a lot of different levels there, right? Too. So that's
Well,
diversified effort.
there's no one size that fits all, right? So and you have to look outside of it, because if we don't have enough graduates that really want to enter into, supervision at the ICI level, maybe they have their sights set on high-rise residential, or residential, or heavy civil. There's so many different aspects to construction. We want to make it easier for them to facilitate entry into what we need right now, which is supervision at the ICI level. And we've got a pool of individuals, newcomers. We want them to be able to find their path to us as easy as possible. And so, like, you had mentioned immigration at the onset, 100%. You mentioned about, getting the word through schools. That's another thing. We're facilitated, and we're connected to all the universities and all the colleges. We just want to be able to facilitate for our members a pool of talent that they can draw from. And that means that the students know that there's placement, and so there's a job at the end of the tunnel. And so, like, by tying these two together, I think it really, there's synergies here.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why we took it upon ourselves to, get the grant money, because it is all about skills development.
Yeah, was there not just legislation passed in this year or last on high schools in Ontario or another province in Canada regarding having trades count as credits toward?
Yeah,
Am I correct? Yeah,
you are correct. And again, that's something that
that's a
Minister
big step. Yeah.
it is a big step that Minister McNaughton, we for the last number of years, we've been working with the Toronto District School Board, and the program that we facilitated with them is called Step to ICI Construction. And the step aspect of things is we place students onto job sites for an entire semester. They work under the control, tutelage, and supervision of, like, site super or the foreman, whatever the case may be, of the company in question. So you've got company ABC. Company ABC pulls them under their wing, places them with a site super. That site super shows them all the aspects. So we could have 26 trades on site, right? Whatever the case may be. They place them with each trade for about a week, right? So as they're experiencing, these trades, they get a taste of, what each trade can deliver. Most students, unfortunately, only know the compulsory trades. I know electrical, I know plumbing, I know carpentry. They have no idea that there's a plethora. There's 144 different possibilities in trades. And a lot of these kids come in going, yeah, I think I want to be a plumber. And next thing you know, when they go through the program, they're like, oh my God, I want to be a sprinkler fitter, or I want to be a tile setter, or I didn't realize how cool this aspect would be, or that aspect. And I go to these graduation classes, and the only problem is that they're limited to, 88 students per semester, because there's only so many classes that can actually get this done. We are trying to implore upon the Ministry of Education to really expand upon this, because we believe that having this program in every single school board throughout the province, or throughout Canada for that, would be phenomenal, because your entry point now to the amount of students that you come in, it's 88 students per semester times 144. So you're starting to get to the point where you can actually start solving the shortages on things, because you've got people interested in the trades, but they don't know what they don't know, because they're not given exposure to the trades until they actually enter into it. So that's why this is kind of a concerted effort, right? We talk to the Minister of Labor in order to make sure that there's a campaign just to start talking about it, and for it to be known as a viable endpoint, as a career choice.
Yeah, I wonder. This might sound a little far fetched to try and draw a thread, but I wonder what kind of impact that might have on the immense amount of mental health problems there are with kids between the age of 16 and 25. That's a fact, within the mental health community. Like, a lot of kids are struggling with depression and anxiety. The suicide rate is really high. I just wonder, when it comes to some kids, the way that we're kind of, thrown into this machine-like education system and society. I remember watching a TED talk about a couple of examples that this speaker had given about young kids who instead of, they'd be throwing some medication and this or that from the counselor, when all they really should have been doing was they should have been put in dance class, or they should have been, they should have had an outlet for. So I'm thinking of the trades in the same way as an art form, right? You mentioned your father was, a stonemason, and these are art forms. These are I'm not. This isn't a sexist comment. I'm talking very masculine traits and feminine too. But for someone to be able to build things with their own hands, and the satisfaction that you can get from that, when you don't do it for a while, and you're just like, I have a background in construction too, and when you're not building stuff with your hands, and all your work is white collar, you're thinking, it's different mental energy, but the satisfaction you can get from just changing a tire, or from doing something with your hands, it's like, that you can look back and say, this is what I did today. And the point I'm trying to make is that, if kids who are more geared toward that within their personality, their psychology, their makeup, everyone is different and complex, right? But if some kids who are meant to be working with their hands more, or even thinking more when it comes to building and envisioning and trades and the creative side of it and all that, who aren't given that opportunity, and maybe are kind of, stonewalled into other things that don't suit their genetic makeup, and things that kind of make them come alive, but also is a way of, or it's a release for them, right? So it might sound far fetched, but it's too bad that that's not there as as an option more often, you know, for some of these younger kids, right? And like you said, you're solving the problem from from the age of, you know, 6, 7, 8, even, or even younger than high school, right? I mean, parents who want their kids to be in hockey, you know, because they want them to be pro, they're starting them at 3. They got skates on when they're 4 years old, right? Well, you know, we need to have this. You need to solve the problem kind of there too. And if that was done the last 50 years, we wouldn't have the labor shortage, you know, that we have today.
You know what? I think that analogy is a perfect tie-in. I think that, um, every parent wants their kid to, to do well and to make money, and so they put them into hockey because they hope that they're going to be discovered or they have the talent to be in NHL. Um, the sad fact is that only a small percentage actually do get that break where they can, gain access to the NHL. The trades have a much more welcoming demeanor, if they're put into
Yeah.
trades or at least exposed to it. I can remember, I can tell you, I've been exposed since I was a kid. I remember when blueprints were actually blue, and I'd be sitting on my
Yeah.
dad's lap,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
like he would explain to me what they were all about. So before I could read blueprints because he explained stuff to me. And again, with just numbers and whatnot. But I found, I grew up as my dad is stonemason, so he became, a bricklayer over here. I grew up on construction sites. I learned how to drive a forklift when I was 9. It's now obviously, the laws have changed, so you can't have a child that young on job sites. But I had such a sense of satisfaction being able to help my father create something, and it's, that's something that, if it were to be brought back in the schools, I think that having shops, having a tactile learning experience like you're talking about, because not everyone learns really well from just reading and that rinse and repeat and memorize this and then regurgitate. It's let's experience it, let's build it, let's have something tangible. And that's why shops are so cool. And one other aspects that I don't want to necessarily disagree with you on, but I want to kind of like change the perspective on. You said it's a very masculine thing. In the step to ISI construction, the cohort this year coming in, 50% female, 50% male. So I can
Mhm.
say that we have an equal opportunity for all to come in. And
Yeah.
it's not necessarily a masculine thing, it's a satisfaction that you get
Mm.
out of it. So to your point, you are able at the end of the day to turn around and go, holy man, I did that. That's amazing. I with my own hands framed this wall, painted that, I built this. It doesn't matter what it is. That sense of satisfaction is what, and pride is what we got to get back into the trades, and is what we have to get back into construction, because we're a wonderful community. We're an amazing destination, but not enough young people know that yet. And so our job is to really hype it up. But not only that, prove to them that, like, you can start as a bricklayer and end up in a suit and run an association. It's not that hard.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's yeah, same deal. If you're a pro athlete, you know, you can end up working, you know, as a broadcaster or as an owner of a team later on, right? Same idea.
Or if you don't do things right, you can work as a barista at Starbucks.
Maybe be the water boy.
You can be the water boy.
Maybe let's take a shift. I mean, this conversation that's very engaging. You know, to kind of talk about things from that perspective, invigorating. But maybe we'll take a little bit of a technical turn and talk a little bit about, you know, the association's role when it comes to your members and, you know, all these general contractors, like you said, small, medium to large, but often signing, you know, very complex contracts where, you know, it's hard for anyone, one person, to keep up with, you know, the stipulations and protocol in indemnities, limitations of liability, all these kinds of things when it comes to contracts for these GCs. And you know, one of the big things you do at the association and yourself personally is kind of just give governance and facilitate advice and helping with contractual issues. Can you just kind of give us a little bit of an overview? I'm not saying you have to give specific examples, but just how important that is, right? Because, you know, when it comes to the owner groups, whether it's a government project or a private monies, you know, there's some very high numbers being signed here at these contracts and a lot of risk being taken. So talk about how you help with that.
So I think that what your audience needs to know is that, this is something that hasn't happened. Like, this has evolved since 1939, right? This has been something that we as an organization have been assisting contractors, generally speaking, at the tender phase. because once a contract is signed, then the provisions and whatnot that you have in there are somewhat locked in. So we always try and be proactive at it and get it at the tender phase. So our members come to us and say, hey, this municipality ABC or company ABC has released this tender. We're not quite sure about the validity period or this period or whatever this, or can they say that they're going to pay us in 8 months as opposed to 28 days as per the Construction Act? And I'd be like, no, that's contrary to the act. So we advise them to say, provide me with the tender. We then write the buyer, because we communicate independently with each individual that may be a pre-qualified bidder. We communicate with them and say, all right, where are your pain points? And we notify it, and we look through the contract as well. We've got a vast array of associate partners. So we have an APP committee, associate partner program, comprised of insurance companies, surety companies, lawyers, people who really assist in the betterment of construction, but aren't really contractors themselves. And so we can go out to them and say, is this legit? Can they do this? Can they say this? And we get legal responses that we then are able to compile in our responses and submit to them and say, no, you can't have a validity period of 120 days for the following reasons, because, we are, as contractors, are only getting price guarantees from our subs for up to 48 hours. So how can I hold my price for,
Yeah, it's not even 30 days from that level these
no,
days, right?
it's
It's
48,
40
it's 48
hours.
hours.
Yeah.
And so we communicate that openly to the buyers of construction and explain to them why, if they want better pricing, reduce your validity period back to historical standards, which are 30 days. If you sit there and say, I want you to hold your price for 9 months, and that is not even, we had one just recently. It was a municipality who came out and said, we want you to hold your price for 9 months. And I said, you're going to get no people holding their price for 9 months. So we qualified the bid saying, change the following provisions and we'll consider submission. And if you don't change the submission, then I'm not bidding, because you're not in a position to be able to do so. Contractors price risk, and if you make it riskier, the higher the price, right? But we don't know. Look, we've all gone through COVID. No one could have seen COVID coming. And now, having experienced it, it is now built into some of the contracts saying, if we go through another pandemic, you're responsible. Well, how am I responsible? How am I going to be able to control the supply chain? We've all seen what it can do. So we make sure that we curb provisions like that. Indemnifications that remove the upper cap and the timelines are things that we want to make sure are not in the vernacular of the buyers of construction, because that's a company killer. If you remove the upper limitation on indemnification and the timeline, that means that they can come back to you at any one time for any price point. That's insane. No contractor should be able to and won't say yes to that. And so what we do then is we submit after talking independently. So the contractors never actually talk to each other. They only talk to the association. We submit on behalf of the industry and all bidders involved. We never name the bidders, but we
Right.
submit on behalf,
Confidentiality here. Yeah.
100% confidentiality on behalf of everyone. We submit saying that if you change this provision to the following, so if you reduce your validity period from 9 months to 30 days, you will get better pricing, or you'll get at least attract more bidders, because the bidders have a choice, and because there's a risk element to it, they have to price that. If they know that it's restricted down to a price point where they can actually manage, then it's easier for them to bid, and it makes sense, right? It's logical. I'll give you a quick example. There was a municipality, which will rename nameless, just because
The
the provision
GTA.
was, no, no, no. No, I'm not going to go in there and throw them under the bus, but it was, so the provision was liquidated damages, and the liquidated damages said that if the construct is not built by, fill in the date, July 1st, 2024, the 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 contractor owes the municipality the total price for the project. So the price for the project was $200 million. I'm like, no contractor worth any salt, or who's read the provision, is going to say yes to that. That's a company killer. And so we're able to basically, by coming at them with this, saying, listen, you should change it to this. We're not big on liquidated damages, but if you do it, then quantify it to a number that and make it so that it makes sense. what assurances do we have that you have all your permits, that you've got your environmental assessment done? Like, let us know to ensure that we can start day one, that we're not going to be delayed by 6 months because you didn't do something, and now liquidated damages come into effect because of your shortcomings. This is all something that, we always write into the buyers of construction, just to inform them, to educate them. Because I hate to say it, a lot of the procurement departments have changed over. A lot of the people, because of COVID, retired. They've left. So you have that institutional knowledge that have left, and you've got a bunch of young kids who are they've come in and they want to rewrite how things are done, and or they've taken stuff that they've done in the past and they've cut and paste, and like, asking for errors and emissions on a bid build doesn't make any sense. It's not a design build, but you're asking for it. So we educate them to say this is something that is not required on this specific project. So a stip sum doesn't require an E&O. So let's remove that so that the contractor's not pricing something that they don't need to.
Right.
Right. But, like, to your point, we do this for all contractors, small, medium, and large. And we've had some of the larger guys come in, even though they have internal legal departments. They see the benefit of working through the OGCA as the voice for all contractors, and it ends up like we're about 85% successful
Yeah. So
in
you're
changing.
go ahead. Sorry.
No, we're 85% successful in changing the bidders, or sort of the buyer's notion of how the tender should be written to the contractor's favor.
That's a good success rate.
Yeah, and it's because of our members. They see value in this, and they bring us the issues, sometimes too many issues, because unfortunately, how things come in waves.
At the
But
same time, yeah.
but at the same time, they're working through the association as the voice for the general contractor. We're very unique in the industry, where we're the only organization that is only general contractors. We don't have any trades and stuff. As I noted, we do have an APP. It's not a membership thing. They're an adjacent group that assists because of, surety, insurance, bonding, all of that, and legal. But they are they're only that. They're an assistance to the general contractors. We as an organization speak on behalf of the general contractors. We get their pain points. We get how solution driven they are, and a lot of times we're successful in getting things changed that nobody thought could get changed. So overall, we've been very, very happy with how we've been able to effective change for our members to the betterment of the industry as a whole.
I'm trying to look at this from like a 30,000 foot view, and when you're talking about infrastructure dollars in Ontario and GTA and all the other municipalities around Ontario, so many, you have an outlook of 10, maybe 5 year increments, 10 year increments. You're seeing that the government, provincial, federal, is pumping money into healthcare the next so many years. Could be schools, could be that the U of T or University in Ottawa that has big plans for campus additions or renovations or whatnot. You're constantly, as the president of OGCA and OGCA as a whole, facilitating this, like you said, this massive portion of the GDP, and between political realm for the contractors that are overseeing the construction. There's a lot of relationships there to manage, kind of cross tangent into lots of different arenas, right? So can you talk a little bit about your role and how you're constantly keeping your pulse on elections and acts and things within the political realm, and then you're coming back to the contractors saying this is what's going to happen in the next 5-10 years, or these are the issues. You've got a lot to navigate there.
So yes, we do have a lot to navigate, but I also want to note that the association has a staff, and the association we derive benefit from the APP program, our associate partners, because they're the ones who, we'll get law firms, send us bulletins and send us notations about stuff they've heard. And then with a phone call, you can get even further information, right? We pride ourselves on having very good relations with government, because we're actually, emailing, calling them, talking to them. They reach out to us for input. We've, just recently had certain ministries go, hey, if we did this, would this better the system? And they want to know from general contractors directly, so they come to us. Um, Meeting with multiple boards, meeting with other stakeholders. We're involved in so many different boards. We're involved with, the CDAO, the Construction Design Alliance of Ontario. That's 19 different organizations, from architects to engineers, to consulting engineers, to every major, sub-trade. And we all sit and talk about procurement woes and how to better the system. We sit on, health and safety boards. We sit on IHSA. We sit on so many different uh, and fundamentally, life-changing groups. So the conversation is actually quite easy. Plus, we have our committees. We have an innovation committee. We have a health and safety committee. We have a best practices committee. We have an OAA, OGCA committee that just talks about, how architects and general contractors, can alleviate problems before they actually become stuff. So this is all kind of in a day's work. So when you say, how do you navigate that stuff, it's part of the gig, it's part of the job.
Yeah.
It's being able to speak to, your organization and all of Atlantic Canada through you, in saying that we have the same issues that you guys have out there. And that, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We're trying to get, better treads on a balding tire is what we're trying to do, right?
Yeah,
So
well, it's no different than great employees, good employees. I mean, they're going to tell you what they need and what they want, in the same way that the contractors, part of the APP, they're telling you what they need and what they want. When you come back to them with the news, from whatever other sphere of the, political, economical arena, then they're just gonna, you're gonna be able to hash it out between all parties, right?
And for the audience out there that doesn't know, construction's a very small community, even though we're so vast. Everyone knows everybody, in the sense of, like, there's a respect thing that when we meet as a board, we discuss issues that affect every geographic region in Ontario, every size contractor, because it's indicative to general contractors. It's not indicative to big contractors in Toronto. It's indicative to all contractors. And the larger companies assist because they may have gone through an endeavor, a protocol, an activity, and say, "Oh, we've got information on that. Let me provide that to your safety committee, so you can disseminate that through, and so that everyone's on the same playing field." That's the benefit of having an association where you're sharing information, because we don't see things like health and safety as proprietary. Health and safety is something that we should all be thinking of before a shovel hits the ground, right? BIM, and getting everyone on the same page on moving us towards that technological advancement to better us, so that we can, better and look at clash detection and how things are built and whatnot in the 3D setting, so that before we, to avoid the claims on the back end, the lawyers are going to kill me on this one now, but to avoid the claims on the back end, to fix it on the front end, so that it's easier for us to get and adhere to schedule. So these are the kind of things that we're always talking about and always advancing. And so having an association like ours really benefits the entire industry, because we're constantly talking about things that affect only general contractors. So yeah, I'm very proud to be, representative of this group. I'm very proud to be able to say they could have got a better looking spokesmodel, but they got stuck with me. But I'm very proud to say that, what they do on a regular basis is really focused on general contractors only. So from that standpoint, a lot of your members could benefit from replicating stuff like we've already done, and we're happy to provide assistance in any way we can.
Yeah, it's interesting, that you're drawing the thread. A lot of the problems that your members are having, they are the same problems, right? I mean, think about big, small, mid-size. I mean, these issues are not across the board. It's there's lots of similarities, and I think a lot of people might look at the size and the vastness. Right, you're right. Your point to how big the industry is, or some of the projects that are happening in the GTA and throughout Ontario compared to Atlantic Canada, and but you're still building, and you've got it's the same issues, right? So we can learn so much just by having conversations with each other. And I wanted to go further into that comment you made about BIM. Let's talk a little bit about the small to medium size, right? Contractors. I know even in your membership tiers, like, you have GCs that are at the 5 million revenue mark, and then between 5 and 25 mil up to 150 mil, and then beyond, right? So there's so many different size, and companies become different entities at those different points, right? It takes on a different life, like they're different types of companies, right, within those different tiers, right? And that's why they're broken up that way. But, for small to mid-size general contractors throughout Ontario, but there's lots in Nova Scotia too, right? There's lots happening in rural Nova Scotia and New Brunswick and Newfoundland and Prince Edward Island. And these are GCs that aren't maybe right in the core of HRM, building the big complex projects downtown, but there's so many great things happening beyond that, right? Maybe it doesn't get the same amount of, it's not as sexy maybe, but, for these small to mid-sized contractors who, could be operating more efficiently when it comes to some things that they haven't adopted yet, like, whether it's BIM or, obviously Procore is pretty well known, and you need to have these things now just to compete. But the time saving, we talked about this when we chatted last week about, to adopt these things, you could save the money on one job in 12 months, right? When you're keeping track of hundreds of change orders on a job, and when you have BIM modeling for the early onset, but I think specifically to some of the smaller and mid-sized GCs, that they don't see themselves like, well, we don't need that yet. We're not that advanced. We're not doing these major we're not big enough. But at the same time, like, yeah, I mean, it's the same old saying as a salesperson, like, you can't sell something to someone that it's sad because they need it, but you can't just tell them that they need it, right? And then 3 months later, after you've sold them that, they say, why didn't I do that 5 years ago, right?
And so it goes back to the whole premise that I talked about, how we can educate all of our members and the larger companies who have gone through these pain points, because they've realized that they need a management system or personnel resource system or a scheduling system, and so they go through all of these pain points because they required it for the company to run more efficiently. We're able to then communicate that to the smaller members, saying, if you do X, Y, and Z, you'll be that much farther advanced in 3 months. And it always comes down to price. So I can give you anecdotally, I went to a small mom and pop contractor. They do a lot in the school board realm of things, right? And they a lot of renovations. And for them, a $5 million contract is equivalent to what $100 billion contract would be for another member, right? Like, it's all relatively speaking. And they had a litany of change orders on a project, and I had asked just out of curiosity, but what did those change orders amass to? Like, what was the total amount? And the amount they provided me, I said, based on the time, energy, and the amount of money involved in those change orders, had you done BIM, it would have paid itself with just half that amount. And so, like,
Yeah.
these are things that you also have to look at, because it's all about efficiency. How does a contractor make money? You price a job, you get in, you do the job, there are no problems, you get paid, you get out. That's how a contractor makes money, right? It's not, I get in, then I look for problems to get change orders because I want to fight with the client at the end of it and hopefully get pennies on the dollar on my claim. That's not indicative of how we do things.
Yeah.
And so,
but contractors are so busy doing that, get in, get the job done, like you said you would, and get out without any, too many deficiencies and trade damage and going back for whatever wasn't done right, that they don't have the time to, they're so immersed in and it's a very demanding, money and time, and money is always going to be the big thing. And like you said, it comes down to cost. It always is. But in a sense, it's more about and we've had guests on our podcast talk about, incorporating Procore into their working model, a new technology, a new accounting software, BIM, any new, it does, it's not just about the cost, it's about the time and the change. And, it's so hard to be open to such a big change to how we've done things, right? So but in the sense that still is cost, right? Because it's going to cost money. It's going to cost more time. It's going to take more time. It's going to be a frustrating period of maybe a year where all these little key commands or whatever you're used to doing, they're all going to change, right? And that it's a frustrating extra layer of stress for that amount of time. So that's why a lot of people don't agree to it too. But essentially, it's still about cost, right? It's still going to
Cost being one aspect. I think the unknown and the change aspect is also it weights very heavily in that, because people are resistant to change. Let's be honest, human nature.
yeah.
You know what you know, and when you get into that, like, it becomes comfort zone thing. When you drive to work, you kind of take the same route every day. You don't,
Yeah.
go north to go south type thing, right? That's not
Yeah.
what you're all about. Why? Because it's comfortable. You know how long it's going to take you. You know all of the parameters. When you start changing stuff like that, now all of a sudden you introduce unknowns. And so, from a contractor standpoint, let's be honest, general contractors don't like unknowns. We price risk. Remember what I said?
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
so,
Exactly.
when you have an unknown and it's not proven, that's why it's kind of helpful for a larger company to say, look, we gone through it. It took us X number of months. It cost us X number of dollars. And then all of a sudden, this is the savings you get on the back end. And all of a sudden, the smaller contractors go, oh, wait, I could do that. And so it's almost like an older sibling teaching a younger sibling, the ropes type thing. It's helpful in the industry. And our our group does it really well. Our contractors talk to each other really well. Even though they're fierce competitors, there is a respect because we're in the same pool. And it may not be at the same level, but you'll have larger companies coming to small mom and pop shops and saying, absolutely, you know what, we're not competitors, but we see that you're doing really well in this realm, congratulations. Or if you change this one aspect, you could get that much more out of it. You know what I mean? Like, so these are all things that I think overall would be fantastic for other associations and other groups to take on, from both a networking aspect, but from an information standpoint, because that's what our commodity is. It's information. You share information, you raise, the level of everyone,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right?
It's funny. Keep. Did you have
I was
something
going to
else you want
say,
to add?
well, I'm going to throw in an old adage, right? So, um, Confucius once said that, you know what, if you show me, I'll forget. No, if you tell me, I'll forget. If you show me, I'll remember. But if you involve me, I'll understand. And that's kind of like where we want to be. We want to be at that understanding basis, so that a smaller contractor then internalizes and understands why, switching to said technology is better for them, and why investing the money in that technology could better the company, for them to break that threshold. Maybe they want to be, over that $5 million in gross revenue. Maybe they want to be 6, 7, 8. How do you do that? Well, if you incorporate this technology, it can just thrust you over, or slowly push you over, or whatever the case may be. But it it allows you, and that's kind of like the equalizer. Technology ends up being the equalizer in all things. All things being equal, if you're that much more advanced on the tech side and you can communicate that much quicker, and you know what's going on your job site faster and better than your competitor, you got an edge. And so that's why we're always talking about BIM and technology, and advancing and dialing it up, that we're not a bunch of Luddites. We don't walk around, with a wheelbarrow and a shovel, screaming at each other.
Yeah.
We've got, complex, like, some of our contractors are into 8D for BIM. 8D is thinking about how to set up safety on scaffolding before the job is even set up. And they look at the parameters of the landscape and the topography, and, oh, there's some electrical poles over here, and they go to the client and say, if you bury these poles now, you'll save yourself $5 million, instead of waiting, until we break ground and do that, because we're already going to be excavating. So for us to excavate that and put it in will cost you nominally, as opposed to waiting until after the fact. And so these are the kind of solutions, because our contractors are problem solvers. Let's be honest. This is what they do on a regular basis. You get a bunch of contractors together. They're trying to solve,
Yeah,
any problem, the
well,
world's woes.
they're solving problems before they happen, right? A year before they happen, or 10 years, right? When they're catching these things long before. Yeah, no, it's interesting. A point you made too, when you talked about the older sibling, and you brought in that adage. I think a lot of these changes and transitions in companies too often do take place when it comes to the technology, when it's an older generation passing on the business to a younger generation, right? Obviously, that's that grew up in a different times, a different demographic. You know, maybe it's Gen X or millennials exposed to baby boomers, and they've got, you know, just a different way of thinking. So that's a big thing too. And I know there's some statistics. I'm not going to name any, but within the next 6 or 7 years, you know, we're expecting a lot of, and you mentioned in a different context, a lot of people are retiring, right, from different institutions, from different parts of different associations, from general contracting companies that have been around for, you know, these people have been involved for 30, 40, 50 years, and they're retiring soon. And there's there's going to be a big shift, right? What's your thoughts on that, and where do you see, you know, we did talk about the labor shortage already, but like you mentioned, you know, site supervision is such a key role, such a hub, and I wonder, like, what's your take on this next 5 years or so, and kind of filling in a lot of people that are going to be retired, and then what in your opinion, like what makes a good supervisor for a GC on site? Like, what kind of people, what kind of skills, what's the, you know, the model, what's the perfect, not perfect, but what kind of person is that? You know, that's a tough role to fill, and that's a big role that a lot of GCs are trying to find, right? There's a real shortage in men and women who can look after these major projects from a supervision standpoint. There's only so many out there with that have so much experience, right?
I think that you know there's no one perfect, you know, one size fits all type thing, but I think there are some characteristics that if you want to be successful in the role of site super or project manager, I think, you know, you gotta want or thrive on, you know, you got to be a problem solver, you got to like a challenge, you got to like people. I hate to tell you, but you're gonna have to deal with a lot of people. So if you don't like people, probably not your stick. And
Exactly.
you have to be able to communicate. I think you have to have a level-headedness about you. Got to be able to remain.
Well, it's funny. All the things you just mentioned, you know, and for good reason. I mean, you've got to have the experience and knowledge, but we didn't talk about construction at all in those things. I mean, these are all things that are inherently
Fundamental skills.
right. So I was going to draw on, you know, what's your opinion when it comes to, as opposed to IQ, but EI, emotional intelligence. You know, there's a lot of talk about that in the psychology field, in the you know, business world. This is a far greater indicator of success for individuals. Those who have high emotional intelligence, whether their IQ is average, whether their experience level is good enough on the resume to partake in that specific role, but your EI, you're not going to be drawn out emotionally by the same things, and you certainly have to have a very sound emotional intelligence to deal with that many different kinds of people, with that complex of a project, with that many moving parts, with that fast a timeline. That's a big thing that you really need, right? You need to be in control of your emotions. And if you haven't been taught or learned or got, then your emotions are going to get the best of you, and it's going to compile really quickly. What's your
Yeah,
thoughts on that?
you're absolutely right when it comes down to remaining calm even under stress. Um, that itself is worth its weight in gold. Someone not freaking out over the littlest thing, or oh no, we didn't get this. Being able to manage that from the 85,000 foot level, and you know, it's either emotional intelligence or common sense, or you know, fill in
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever adjective you want to at the time. It's all a matter of being able to work with all of the stakeholders um, cohesively, right? And to not everyone's going to get along. That goes without saying. Like you can't go into a room and anticipate that, you know, 10 people in the room are all going to love you. That's unrealistic. But aim for 80%. Right, try
Yeah.
and get the message across to 80% of the group, because all of a sudden you'll find that the other 20%, even begrudgingly, they'll have to, you know, they want to get paid or they want to get the job done. They're gonna follow suit. I think that, you know, emotional intelligence isn't something that's taught in school. I think that, you know, relaying back to your initial point about, you know, what's going to happen when, you know, all this institutional knowledge is gone with, you know, some of the people leaving the industry. we are finding that some of the people who have retired, after being retired for a number of years, have come back to the contractor saying, "Hey, can I even work for you part time on site? I'll help and communicate to the next." Goes, "I'm bored at home. I don't know what to do." That kind of stuff,
Oh,
because it's
there's
ingrained.
your training program, right?
And that's
Perfect.
so that's
Perfect.
one aspect of it. So we from an organizational standpoint are trying to parlay that, like, all the project managers that have been in the industry for 30 years and are now, wanting to ride out into the sunset, say, "Hey, can we pick your brain once a month, and or would you like to do a talk in front of, some up and coming, potential project managers?" You'll find that, in our industry, because we're pretty cordial and we're pretty, obligatory. We're like, absolutely, we're happy to assist in any way possible. And so, we are able to pass along that institutional knowledge in a small part. I think that, as the program grows, we'll pull more from, those who are retiring or whatnot, have specialty people who can do podcasts or recordings like this, so that we can have it in perpetuity, so that we can, keep playing it and say, "Oh, this man knows his stuff. You want to listen to this podcast, listen to this." And so it can continually, we're using technology. I get back to that point. We're using technology to help train the next group of individuals, and most of the training now can be done online, right? So it doesn't even matter geographically where you are. You don't have to come into a classroom to do it, but you do need, maybe a retired facilitator to say, "Yeah, that wasn't bad, but if you did this minor change," because we can't lose the human touch, is what I'm suggesting.
Oh,
That AI and whatnot will never replace what a person can actually do, because AI only learns from all of the past stuff. A person has that emotional intelligence, to your point. So yeah, I see that, there's definitely a place for people who are exiting the industry to still assist if they choose to in the industry, you know, unless they've left and said, "You know what, I'm done. I'm riding off into the sunset." Then
which
that's which is
you
also
can't
valid,
you can't blame them
totally
at
valid.
all.
I can't knock him for doing that either.
Yeah, you can't blame them at all. Oh God, no, that's so true. Thanks for sharing your thoughts on that, Giovanni. I had like 10 other things I wanted to ask you. There's so many things we could talk about. Is there anything on your mind that we hadn't touched on behalf of the Ontario General Contractors Association that you wanted to, just kind of extend to our audience, to promote or to just draw attention to? That's on your mind?
I can tell you that from my standpoint, under my tenure, when I came on, I'm really trying to focus on, the small to medium sized contractor. And I find that if you take care of them, not at the negligence of the larger contractors, please don't misunderstand that. What I am saying is that the larger contractors have, um, individuals who already work in their organizations, internal lawyers, sometimes, health and safety
Yeah.
professionals. They have whole divisions. Their IT departments could be vast, so they don't have the same pain points as a smaller contractor. So we work with the larger contractors to assist the smaller ones in really elevating them. There's a saying that, the tide raises all ships. And so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to raise all the ships in our association and in our industry, for that matter, to really, educate them, provide them with the tools, provide them with the resources, so that when they go in and they talk to a buyer of construction, they're confident about their position. They're confident because they were like, "Oh, the OGCA just put out a bulletin on indemnification. The OGCA just put out a bulletin on liquidated damages and what we should and shouldn't accept. The OGCA just put out a bulletin." And so it's one of these things where, information is power. And so the more you know, the better you're able to make decisions. And because our contractors make decisions every single day, they need to be fed constantly. And so this is our lot in the entire scheme of things. We move information around, and when we're given some information, we validate it, we ensure that it's correct, and then we disseminate it through the industry, because we want to make sure that everyone is armed and ready to make that decision and make it, properly. So by focusing on the smaller contractors, we find that there's that sense of satisfaction for the medium and larger ones, because they're giving back, and the small contractors aren't it's not just about the big guys. And for like I said, since I've taken over in 2020, it's not just been about the larger contractors. It's been about all contractor issues. And we
Yeah,
find that it's been very beneficial, and the feedback that we're getting is we're on the right path. We're not quite at the pinnacle yet, but we are advancing the cause the way it should be. So for all other associations out there, don't just focus on one category. Make sure that you love your children all the same. They're all amazing.
yeah, they're all different, but we love them the same. Exactly. I gotta love them differently. That's no, and certainly the Construction Association in Nova Scotia and the others in the different provinces do a great job of that, serving all the different sized contractors that are with them. And like to your point, that's often where the biggest impact though is made, right? I mean, like you said, corporate is corporate, and the big companies take on, they're their own beast. And you don't neglect the efforts there. But this is often where the biggest impact is made on those small to medium-sized companies, and not just on their companies, but the people, right? I mean, you impact those owners in a big way. They can't live without you, right? In some regards, like that's a strong statement, but what you're facilitating to them carries much more weight to get them, to elevate them, and for peace of mind, and for minimizing risk, and just to be there as an advocate, right? So
Yeah, and I'm not about to say that they can't live without us. I think if anything, we add to their toolbox. So, contractors have many, many tools that they can utilize at their disposal. The association's just yet another tool. Sometimes I can be a finesse tool. Sometimes I can be a sledgehammer. It depends on what you need, right?
or
So
depends
that's
on what side of the bed you wake up on in the morning.
it depends on what
Hey,
issue we're talking about, right?
I'm
So
I'm Italian. You can't blame me here.
no, but I think that from your audience perspective, I know that that Ken's does a fantastic job out in Nova Scotia, like there, and it's Duncan out there, and he's awesome. And through other organizations like the CCA, we work together with all associations right across Canada, and we continually talk about issues and whatnot. So nothing is ever done in isolation. I think for the contractors in your geographic region of Atlantic Canada, they may think that they're the only ones suffering a pain point, and I'm here to tell you they're not. It's being felt right across Canada. It's being felt right across. I can tell you in Ontario, there's probably no issue that you guys are facing other than maybe flooding. That would be the ocean coming in and flooding certain aspects. That would be the only thing geographically
Right.
that would
You're
set us differently
landlocked.
apart.
Yeah. Yeah.
Landlocked. We're landlocked here, but
Yeah.
there's from a general contractor basis, you've got to look at things holistically, and the more we talk, the more we're invited to podcasts such as yours. The more that we share this information, the better we become.
Yeah, thank you so much, Giovanni. Real pleasure to chat with you. I mean, we could go on for hours, but in the interest of time and your time, we'll cut things off there. And this has been a great conversation. Great for our team here at Atlantic Construction Podcast, and hoping that our listeners throughout Nova Scotia and the rest of Atlantic Canada draw on all the topics that we talked on today. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it. It's been a blast.
It's been an absolute pleasure. And, please, by all means, if there's anything in the future that we can assist with, be it Atlantic Canada, be it, any of your other listeners, because I'm assuming that this is going to be broadcast far and wide, just because you got that kind of staying power, I'd be very happy to assist in any way possible, because that's what we want to see ourselves as an asset and as a resource to the industry.